My name is Jose Lopez Ganem. I'm a faculty member here at Boston University, also the outreach coordinator for our program, the Food Studies programs here at BU. And I am the executive director of another logo you might recognize in today's menus, the Fine Cacao and Chocolate Institute, which I'm very happy that we have this partnership with to, in many ways, celebrate one aspect of cacao and chocolate of the many I think we have been invited in this space to celebrate over the years. The reason we're having this here is first and foremost is because we like to have things at BU. And BU is a synonym of good food in the Boston area. But also since 1991, when this program started, when Julia Childs and Jacques Pepin had the idea to go beyond preparing food and serving food on a business model, they wanted to think about food. When we are faced with this idea that an ingredient that for generations we have met either in a bar or a powder to drink, even coming up in pumpkins or Santa Clauses shaped, that we can go back and actually understand the diversity in which it grew, the idea that this was an ingredient for many other preparations beyond a sweet tradition or a sweet treat. This is something that we want to also make sure that we celebrate in the memory of Julia, in the companionship of Jack Steele. And also Katie Duckworth, who you see over there, we're talking about if there has ever been in indigenous, specifically northern or Central Indigenous demo here at BU, and this is the first one ever, I understand. So it is in many ways a paramount that we do during Latine or Latino Heritage Month, as well as in Native American or Indigenous Peoples Heritage Month. So it's a nice combination, a nice overlap of a profoundly complex relationship. I want to thank, of course, BU Food Studies, BU Archaeology, the BU Center for Latin America. I also want to thank the FCCI and all the people behind it. I want to thank some of the sponsors that made some of the bites possible. There's quite a few ingredients that are very hard to get, very hard to source. I want to thank particularly my colleague Karen Mathaney, who you will meet in a moment, Andrea Catania back with a powerful writing board, Katie Duckworth, whose basically work has made all of this possible. So thank you, Katie, for setting us up for success. And I want to also thank someone very special that I got to meet a couple of years ago, but over the last weeks, much, much better. Doña Estela Calzada, thank you so much for making time to being here as well and to join us for this celebration. With nothing further ado, I want to say that this gathering is shaped by an exhibition of archaeological pieces just down the street to your right. And that exhibition is apropos of a much larger gathering or more larger action taken by Latin American countries of repatriating their cultural heritage. As we grow and as we develop and continue to be regimented on the market space, cultural property becomes something that you can sell or that you can use to make a sale. And the idea that chocolate has an intellectual property and it belongs to the many peoples of Mesoamerica, the many peoples of the Americas, can also be a tracking board for us to actually talk about object repatriation as a way of reparation. So please also make time to visit. If you are not registered, I'm pretty sure we're going to have multiple spaces, so do go get. And if you are able to eat after today, there's pan de muerto and chocolate as well. Thank you so much for your time. And I would like to welcome our very own Karen Mathaney, that's going to give us contextualization about cacao and chocolate and about the powerful connection between food and archaeology. Dr. Mathaney, thank you.
All right, well, welcome everybody. We're so glad to have you here today, our many colleagues, our students, and friends of the food studies programs as well. We welcome you all. And on behalf of the Fine Cacao and Chocolate Institute, the Archaeology Program at Boston University's College of Arts and Sciences, the Pardee School of Global Studies Center for Latin American Studies at Boston University, we're very happy to host these demonstrations and the exhibit of ancient Mesoamerican artifacts made for the preparation and consumption of cacao. These artifacts have been assembled over the previous year by our colleagues at FCCI, Dr. Carla Martin, who is stationed back in the library where the exhibit is taking place, Dr. Katie Sampek, and of course Jose Lopez Ganem. And they've been working not only to assemble these objects, but to arrange for their repatriation to their countries of origin. So this is very exciting. Their efforts have provided us with a very unique opportunity to view these vessels before they are returned to their native countries. All right, so today's events have been described as a day of celebration of Mesoamerican art, cuisine, and cultural heritage centered around cacao and chocolate. On the Friday before Indigenous Peoples Day, and of course during the month of Latin American Heritage Celebration, we offer you an opportunity to taste traditional cacao and chocolate recipes, but also to learn about the history and archaeology of chocolate and cacao, and to explore the cultural heritage of these foods and beverages. It is also an opportunity to talk about why we study food. The answer to this question is not always obvious, even though you are sitting in the demonstration kitchen of the gastronomy program and the programs in food and wine in the food studies programs. But people still ask, why study food? Alternately, the topic is not taken seriously. So I want to talk about this for a few minutes. And I'll just start by saying that everybody eats. And that sounds very silly, but it's a fact. And we all share this need to eat. But we also use food for other purposes. Food is much more than diet and nutrition. It's culturally significant behavior. We use food to communicate, to symbolize, to classify and evaluate ourselves and others, to express our views about the world and our place in it. Our choices say something about who we are, what we value, where we come from, and where we are going. In fact, food impacts nearly every aspect of our lives. So you can use the lens of food to learn about the cultural beliefs of a group or a community, our identities as groups and individuals, whether these are gendered identities, religious, ethnic, national, or some other category. We can examine political and social hierarchies within a society that work to construct and reinforce and also reflect inequalities in our society's institutions. We can look at socioeconomic status and its associated categories and so forth. So food communicates information about relationships and boundaries. And it's also about who we share with or we don't share with. And so this is, again, an introduction to why we think food is important. It tells us where we come from and where our ancestors originated. Now, why an archaeology of food? What do we learn from that? Besides being one of the coolest jobs in the world, an archaeology of food allows us to apply this same lens to individuals and communities in the past. Why is this important? Not only do we need to know where we have come from, but the evidence of food from the past reveals our common humanity. This seems critically important in today's world, particularly when we consider the tensions and conflicts that divide so many communities today. There we go. So food connects us to other times and places and to other people, past and present. Again, everyone eats and everyone has always needed to eat. As a species, food sharing has been critical to our physical survival, but also to our shared experiences across time and space. Whether through feasting or through the daily repast, humans have forged social, cultural, economic, and political bonds through shared meals. Other species may share food, but cooking is a uniquely human behavior. And it has been argued that this behavior, that is cooking food, has propelled significant advances in human evolution. We would not have discussed this 30, 40 years ago. It seems logical and yet not something that people had really thought about. Cooking food allows humans to digest their foods more easily, of course. This leaves more calories available for the other things like using your brain. Archaeological evidence also shows significant developments in human history that can be related to changes in subsistence or food production, from tool use, one of the first behaviors thought to be uniquely human, although it's not, to food storage, to the domestication of plants and animals. Food processing has considerable benefit to diet and nutrition, making food more digestible, and this is especially important as it has allowed us and our ancestors to feed the aged, the infirm, and the very young. It's also made nutrients more accessible, reduced toxicity, and so forth. In this light, though, it's interesting to note that the adoption of food processing and cooking by our ancestors has unified us as a species, and yet we don't all eat the same foods. We don't prepare them in the same way either. Cultures around the globe and throughout our history have developed not only different food preferences and avoidances, but different methods for preparing, eating, and sharing those foods. We have different ideas about what is good to eat, when to eat, how to eat, and with whom to eat. And as groups have come into contact with one another, whether in the past or the present day, these encounters have frequently led to change, whether in the mixing or blending of foods and food practices or the creation of something new. Foods, that is plants and animals, but also food technologies and ideas about food have also been in motion. Foods and ideas about food have diffused at times, spread by people who have been in motion for millennia, but foods have also been borrowed and appropriated. Archaeologically, we can document the impacts of colonialism, industrialization, migration and immigration, and globalization through food. When we see these processes at work through time, it allows us to think about cultural encounters and their outcomes, but also to understand why these changes occur. So why is the prehistory and history of cacao so important? Cacao is a food that has traveled the globe far from its points of origin, and a consideration of its trajectory tells us much about these processes that I've just mentioned. From colonialism to globalization to cultural encounters leading to the movement of foods and technologies and ideas, to food preparation methods and flavors that speak to an identity, one that can be deeply rooted in the past. In this program, we teach our students to make food central to inquiry rather than an afterthought. That vantage point gives us tremendous insight into societies and cultures, past and present. The exhibit, demonstrations, and talks today allow us the opportunity to share our approach to the study of food and to argue for its central importance. The food studies programs at BU seek to combine academic learning with hands-on experiential learning through an interdisciplinary framework. This means that we draw on the expertise of academics from many different disciplines: history, sociology, anthropology, and archaeology, sensory studies, economics and marketing, philosophy. But we also bring in experts from the food industry, food professionals, representatives from NGOs and government agencies who are grappling with issues around food insecurity and the unequal access to food, entrepreneurs who develop new products, and experts who seek to address challenges to the food system around sustainability and inequity. We combine this with hands-on learning, often quite sensorial in nature, and much of it through culinary instruction and exploration, but also through demonstrations of this type, in order to offer our students a truly broad and holistic perspective on food. There we go. There we go, okay. Cacao and chocolate are often a focus of our courses. From recreating the flavors, smells, and appearances of cacao beverages and chocolate desserts using archaeological evidence, historical cookbooks and recipes, traditional technologies, and contemporary ingredients, to studies of food, studies of the history of chocolate in Boston, to sensory studies around the taste and flavor of chocolate, to talks on the commodity and labor chains associated with cacao and chocolate production today. You'll see images here from our chocolate event from last year where students did a focused research into chocolate from different time periods and then presented to their fellow students. Last fall, the food and museums students traveled to the Old North Church that you see here in Boston to learn about the use of cacao as an educational medium through the lens of an 18th century congregant who traded in cacao and chocolate. And then we discussed the implications of using this medium for the museum's interpretive goals, but also its mission statement after the discovery that this congregant was also a human trafficker. Through the lens of Christy Coleman's Intentional Museum, students have held critical conversations about the role of museums in addressing social justice issues, in this case through the lens of chocolate, through the lens of food. How else, in other words, can we talk about cacao and chocolate in museum contexts, given their ties to the brutality and inhumanity of enslavement in the past, and to labor and economic inequities surrounding the production of cacao today? This experience in particular has afforded our students important and even unique learning opportunities that they will carry into the future in whatever direction their studies and professions take them. Today's demonstrations reflect the interdisciplinary approaches of the food studies programs at Boston University, combining more formal contexts for learning with food demonstrations and tastings. The first demonstration will feature traditional indigenous chef Estela Calzada, who will offer prehispanic cuisine, followed by Jose Lopez Ganem, who will then prepare a cacao beverage for tasting. So we thank you for your participation today. We hope that you will not only enjoy the tastings, but the beautiful artifacts in today's exhibits. We also hope that today's event will give you a deeper sense of the past, of our shared history through food, even though our preferences and tastes may vary, and of the cultural relevance of indigenous and Latin American histories and heritage, past and present. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Karen. Thank you for being here and for being not only supportive, but the angle of antiquity not only starts in New England, I think, with artifacts, but also bringing about the conversation on how these artifacts continue to speak in much of how we eat today. So thank you for your work and that of your colleagues. So to the question about the pieces, and of course, for those who have the context of already visiting the exhibit, this will be different for those who haven't just yet. So again, an invitation to visit. How this project started a little bit. There is a rising number of community museums all over Mesoamerica that are trying to bring back or underline some of the culinary traditions that have occurred all over the continent. This is the case for Mexico, but this is the case of Central America as well. And it is born out of a necessity that most Central American nations or Caribbean nations have to many ways demystified the idea that the capital city, in the case of Mexico, Mexico City versus the rest of Mexico, have constructed a narrative around either a particular food, a particular textile, a particular book, a particular religion. So a couple of these museums reach out to FCCI and they were like, we are cacao producer-led organizations, or we have a majority cacao producer-led board. And what they have asked the most is they want a revisionist narrative of cacao and chocolate. And that includes repatriating or reorganizing some of these objects that might be in private collections, in the hands of merchants, in museums, of course, begs the question, and in some cases in museums even within these countries, but just removed on one side in the capital, in places that might be geared to a certain type of tourist. If you have been to Mexico City in the last 4 years, we're that kind of tourist versus the peoples of Mexico. So this quest started by us really just sending a couple of emails to people that we knew through either the alumni associations of BU or Harvard, or through some of the networks that we have in museographists, to identify people that had collected these items before. We were really targeting the private element of this, not so much the museum part, as we know that museums are also fulfilling a strong educational capacity. We were really just looking for literally people that had this in their living rooms, sitting for the private use of the aesthetic value of these items. So, to our surprise, a lot of people were very open to the discussion. I think they have been seeing what's going on with the British Museum and the Aegean panels of the Parthenon. This is not an isolated occurrence that is happening to people that are collecting not antiquities, not necessarily things that are vintage, but things that are archaeological to a certain degree. So with a group of people, and Dr. Matheny mentioned here Dr. Catherine Sampek, who is archaeologist, a historical archaeologist at the State University of Illinois. Now she's doing a fellowship at the University of Reading in the United Kingdom. We were able to start identifying by the glyphs, by the types of vessels, and then through chemical analysis, if these bases or these elements that you're seeing in the room or you have already seen were or had a relationship to cacao. And so they did. I'll tell you a particular anecdote, and I'm pretty sure Dr. Martin has explained already this. If not, I invite you to see it. A very important Japanese businessman, a CEO of one of, I will say, the top 5 Japanese conglomerates. It's an avid collector of Mesoamerican art, anything from antiquity to modernity. He has a number of items that are related to food, specifically, as this conglomerate speaks to food. And he found out that in one of these vases there was represented a person getting an enema. And this was an enema that in many ways, please forgive me, not an archaeologist and a Mexican, I always look for the funny angle in my peer-reviewed conversations. I was like, well, safety first, right? Like hygiene above everything. So it turns out that it's something else. It has a spiritual reason. The mucus around that part of our bodies absorbs specifically hallucinogenic portions quicker than any other in our body. So they will use it for a ceremonial purpose. This was a religious rite. The owner in question said, I don't want this in my living room, right? It's quite graphic. So that vase was going to go to auction, and someone from our network alerted us. The auction house valuated the item in around $25,000. And we identify it because in the reverse of the vase, there is a man through which hands are becoming cacao tree branches. Right? So it is a vase that was indicative of the consumption of cacao from the glyph. The other elements are not so necessary to be seen as clearly. There's not maybe a cacao pod or the word cacao in the Mayan language in Quiche or Yucatecan. So what we know from people that have identified these vases is by the type of angle that the base is made or by the type of size, they will have been used for cacao. And through chemical analysis, we have been able to identify that. What is really interesting, and you will see 2 vases in this exhibition that speaks to that. The first one is literally a vase says, this is the seasonal chocolate, this is the seasonal recreational mug of the such family, etc., and only drank when feeling tall and in spring days, right? So I think about my mug this season that says, meet you at the pumpkin patch, right? Like someone's going to be talking about pumpkin patches in 100 years by finding this particular vase. What is also interesting is we have another vase from very similar collection that has pseudoglyphs. And what are pseudoglyphs? Meaning people in certain parts of Central America were trading with the heartland of Mesoamerica, that it's perceived to be the northern triangle of Central America and southeastern Mexico. And they were trading what Estela is going to inspire us today. They were trading ceramics. Sorry, I was turning on the stove. They were trading ceramics, but many people were not intelligible or they did not know any particular symbols. So what they will do is they will copy the ceramics without not knowing what they meant. So they are pseudoglyphs, and that was a very funny coincidence that we know that this is a knockoff of an original Maya vase made at the time. So it's an antiquity vase. It was used for cacao, but it is not. It is not Gucci. It's Dolce and Dolces, not Dolce and Gabbana, right? So it was just interesting to play with concepts around that line because it led us to see another part of antiquity that we don't normally talk about, which is the quotidianity of it. If you go to the Popol Vuh Museum in Guatemala, if you go to the National Anthropology Museum of Mexico City, you get to see the tables of kings and queens. Well, today we want to talk about the table of file and rank, or rank and file. want to really see that in this table is really where the diversity of ingredients exists, the possibility to think outside of the box, to have improvisation, and to really taste something that today anybody's maybe has a favorite Mexican restaurant around, Felipe's in Harvard Square, El Jefe Tortilleria or Taqueria. I mean, there's plenty to choose. But that come from discussions like this that are quite historic, that are also, that many people have taught for a long time as their original cuisine and think about this as their caviar or think about this as one of the most cherished ingredients. Before we go any farther, I want to also open any other questions. I know that I explain a whole deal about this. Yes.
So, the pseudoglyphs, is there something that cues that up as that's how we know it's a is there something that typifies that we look at that and tell that's not the authentic original? There's a marker that lets you know that?
I will relate what I have talked because this has not been my field of expertise. I feel like passing the notes of Catherine Sampicon or archaeological colleagues that have been kind enough to support this program. But what we know in this one is that they are flipped the other way around and the geoglyphs are too long, right? So someone was copying. If you have copied in an exam, not that we have ever done so, and we don't talk about plagiarism in this room. It's a university. You know that you go sometimes you write a little bit longer, a little bit cricket, and that's what's happening in this base, right? Someone was trying to copy the glyph, and also by the way that they are written, they don't mean anything, right? They are gibberish. Instead of putting the pumpkin patch, is asterisk pound number 162A. Yes, it literally reads like that. So that was what gave it away. For in my eyes, just being the person that was interacting with the different donors and the different private collectors or merchants, I mean, they look beautiful, but I didn't know that it didn't mean anything. Yeah. Any other questions? Any jokes that people want to say? Yes. It's quite it is the quietest Mexican cooking demo I have ever been. But Estela's gonna change that in a minute.
Well, the end of the story made me think of that scene in the Birdcage movie where they had the pots and they didn't want people to finish their soup, so they
yes.
Yes. Inappropriate depictions on the bowls.
It is very interesting to go, especially for me, to go and say this in a straight face sometimes, but a lot of other people are quite good at it. So I maintain the quorum because it was part of an important rite, right? And what we know from this base is that it has a sister, but it's also in the private market. We don't know where it is, right? So the archaeologists in Mexico are very interested to kind of trail now back the way that this CEO acquired it to maybe seeing that it might have been in the same purchase long time ago what it is. We are now more looking into people from different universities like the National University of Mexico, which Hector Zavala here is the representative of UNAM here in Boston, are doing research into tracking different Mayan bases at the MFA, at the Peabody Access Museum, at the Peabody Harvard Museum, that might have been subtracted at a certain point, not in the most kosher terms. Stolen, maybe during an earthquake, in 1981 earthquake of Mexico, there was a couple of looting that, could have been the origin of that. Another story, if you allow me one more, during this repatriation process that caused me quite an interesting point. There was a gentleman from nearby Western Massachusetts, near the time I live, avid collector of antiquities, not just Mesoamerican, that had a box of Aldo shoes. Anybody knows Aldo shoes? Buy one, buy two for $19.99, Aldo shoes. That came with a lot of these little heads and figurine pieces like a leg or any kind of limb, a belly, and was my great-grandfather fought in the 1846 war between Mexico and the United States. And as the American troops were closing in on Mexico City from Veracruz, he kept collecting these pieces as souvenirs. Right? And if you find that you want to give it back, give them back. We gave them back because they don't have anything to do with chocolate. But for a little while, we had more than 30 different heads and limbs of different people that might be ceremonial vessels or funerary stones. And yeah, that was another important part, a Pandora box that we opened. And we certainly know that this is not a job done. There's more to do, and more coordination and more sharing to be spoken of from many different institutions. I don't want to make anybody hungry. Doña Estela, ¿estamos listos? Excelente. So please, guys, help me welcome Estela Calzada. I'm going to translate for Estela, so you're going to keep hearing me, but it's not my voice.
Buenos días a todas, a todos, a todas, a todos y todas. Soy tan mexicana que no hablo inglés.
I am so Mexican that I don't speak English.
Pero acá tenemos un buen traductor.
But we have here an average translator.
Gracias por venir, de verdad, muchas gracias por venir, por interesarse en querer saber, pues, nuestra comida prehispánica.
Thank you so much for being here, for your interest, and especially for your interest in prehispanic cuisine.
Primero le quiero preguntar, ¿les gustó el pan?
Everybody, I want to ask you, have you tried the pan de muerto? Did you like it? Yes.
Les gustó, qué bueno, ese lo hago yo.
She made the pan de muerto.
Sí.
Taking
Sí.
orders. Que está tomando órdenes en este.
Ah, muy bien. Yo tengo esa tradición del Día de Muertos por mi madre. Ella falleció hace 23 años y siempre la veía poner su altar.
I have that tradition from my late mother who passed 20 years ago, and it's from the tradition of seeing her display the altar for Day of the Día de Muertos.
Es una pequeña introducción.
That's a little introduction.
Por el pan, les digo esto. Entonces, yo tengo 20 años en este país y hace 20 años vengo haciendo ese altar aquí.
I have been here for 20 years in this country, and for 20 years I have been replicating that tradition and setting my own altar.
¿Cómo heredamos lo que vemos de nuestros padres?
It's interesting how we inherit what we see from our parents.
Y ahorita lo que yo les traigo es una herencia.
What I'm sharing with you today is also inherited.
Una herencia de nuestros antepasados en México.
An inheritance from our ancestors in Mexico.
Yo soy la señora Estela, soy mamá de 6 hijos.
I am Estela, I am mother of 6.
Mi hija la mayor tiene 45 años
My oldest is 45,
y el más chiquito tiene 30 años.
and the youngest is 30.
Son mi vida,
They're my life,
son mi existir
my existence.
y por ellos hago esto.
And for them I do this.
Porque la comida no es nada más cocinar,
Food is not just cooking,
es dar,
it's give,
de dar el amor de nosotros.
to give love.
Mi papá es de Durango,
My father is from the state of Durango.
mi mamá es de Puebla
My mom is from the state of Puebla.
y mis suegros son de Oaxaca.
And my in-laws are from Oaxaca.
Entonces traigo la tradición de los tres, del norte y del sur.
I have the traditions of the north and south.
Cuando mi madre falleció nos pidió que la lleváramos a su pueblo.
When my mom died, she asked for her remains to be taken to her town.
Y era porque, yo no sabía, pero era porque ella quería que a los 9 días de falleciera se le hiciera mole.
And I didn't know this, but that is because she wanted, in the 9th day after passing, for her to be made, for in her honor to be mole to be made.
Por eso es que la muerte no es tristeza para nosotros,
Death is not sadness for us.
es alegría.
It's happiness.
Vean, mi madre quería que la lleváramos allá para hacer mole.
Look, my mom was thinking of the menu for her death,
Y aprendí a hacer el mole de Puebla,
and she learned then how to make the mole from Puebla.
porque la señora que se le contrató para hacerlo, pues vi todo lo especial que era para comprar las cosas y para elaborarlo.
And from the person that was hired to do this mole, she observed the purchasing, the selection process, and the process of preparation.
Y luego mi hija cumplió sus 15 años, la mayor, y decidimos hacer mole, pero de Oaxaca.
When my daughter became 15 years old, we decided to also make mole, but this time from Oaxaca.
Y contratamos a venir una persona para hacerlo, y lo mismo, muy cuidadosa de todos los ingredientes.
And we hired someone and the same. They were very careful with the ingredients, very picky.
Entonces aprendí a hacer los dos moles, el de Oaxaca por los 15 años de mi hija y el de Puebla por la muerte de mi madre.
So I learned how to do the two moles, one because of a celebration of the 15 years old of my daughter, and the Puebla from the one of the passing of mine.
Son muy diferentes los moles.
They're very different.
Llegué a este país y no los pude hacer igual porque el paladar es muy diferente.
When I arrived to this country, I couldn't do them the same because the palate is quite different.
Entonces ahora el mole que yo hago es un mole bostoniano.
And now I make Bostonian mole.
Muy auténtico, de Boston. Muy auténtico porque a todo mundo le gusta.
It's authentic because everybody likes it.
Pero hoy les traigo un mole muy ancestral.
Today I am bringing another type of mole which is quite old, quite heritage.
Un mole que no tiene almendras, no tiene cacahuate,
No peanuts.
no tiene nueces.
It doesn't have walnuts.
Porque descubrí que hay mucha gente que tiene alergias.
There's a lot of people with allergies to nuts.
Y pues descubrí otra cosa que nosotros, los mexicanos, nuestra gente de antes, era total y absolutamente vegana.
So we know also that people in Latin America, specifically in Mesoamerica, were fully vegan.
Totalmente vegana.
Totally vegan.
El mole que les traigo hoy es lo más ancestral, que eran los puros chiles que se usaban.
So the mole that I'm bringing you today is composed of chiles.
En México tenemos una variedad de chiles.
We have different varieties of chiles, for example.
Tenemos aquí, por ejemplo, el chile ancho,
This is
que es
ancho
este.
chile.
Y si ustedes se fijan, bueno, cuando lo lleguen a observar, lo van a ver un poquito rojito. Se ve un poquito rojito.
A little red hue when you observe it.
Y tenemos el otro que se llama mulato.
And then we have another one called mulatto.
Es más oscuro
It's a little bit darker.
y su sabor es diferente también.
Flavor is different.
Y tenemos el chile pasilla.
And then we have pasilla chile.
Este chile es muy sabroso, pero es muy delicado.
It is very tasty, but it's also very delicate.
Hay que tener mucho cuidado para saberlo combinar, guisar, porque es muy rico.
You have to be very careful to know how to cook with it and how to combine it or blend it.
Yo te traje, el otro chile es el guajillo.
And then we have guajillo as well.
Son dos tipos, el guajillo y el puya.
And then we have guajillo and puya, which tend to son diferentes, pero
Sí,
iguales.
el puya es muy picoso,
Puya is
muy
very
picoso,
spicy.
y el guajillo no pica nada.
The guajillo is more Bostonian.
Exacto. Estos chiles no pican. Estos para nada, dan color nada más,
These are only
Dan
for
color.
colorless chilies.
¿sí? Y tenemos pues los chiles verdes,
And we have green
el
chilies,
oaxaqueño, el jalapeño
jalapeño,
y el no se llama serrano. Serrano, ese chile serrano. El chile jalapeño no pica para nada. Y el chile es bostoniano. Y el chile serrano sí pica.
So jalapeno is not spicy and serrano has a lot of heat.
En México se ocupa mucho este no.
So we use a lot of serrano in Mexico, the jalapeno not so much.
Y bueno, este es nuestro oro
This
verde.
is gold. This is our green
Este es
gold.
nuestro oro verde junto con el chile, es nuestro oro verde en México. Y también el oro negro es el cacao, que es lo que el profesor José representa, ¿verdad? El cacao es nuestro oro.
So we
y-
have our golds, which are the green gold avocados, and then the black gold, which is cacao.
Y tenemos también maíz de diferentes colores. Los principales y los básicos y los primeros que existieron es el azul, el maíz azul, el blanco y, a ver quién me dice, ¿cómo se dice este?
So we have different types of corns. The first one that we have is the blue corn that I show first. The second is the white cacao. And I'm wondering who knows the name of this corn.
¿Y para qué es este? A ver si alguien sabe por aquí, a ver si alguien sabe.
Any takers.
Son especiales cada maíz.
They are special and they have a particular purpose. Listen. I'm sorry? They are not a nut. Eso no es una nuez.
No, es maíz.
They are corn. They are corn kernels. Katie. Is it for pozole?
Oh, sí.
Sí.
Ya se ganó un pozole en mi casa.
She just won a pozole session in Estela.
O sea, es nada más que pues lo siembran para que se haga azul o para que se haga de este color. O es otro maíz especial, pero es igual, pero con este maíz así grueso, grande, que se llama cacahuacintle.
So we are different.
Cacahuacintle.
I'm showing you different corns, and in this one particular is called cacahuacintle.
Cuando ustedes abren el elote, lo ven grande.
When
¿Sí?
you open the kernels and when you
Este.
see the pod, you will see that it's big, not like this one, very small.
¿Sí? Que es con el que se hacen las tortillas. Con este no se hacen tortillas, ¿eh?
This one's for tortillas, the small one, but this one's not for tortillas.
Sí, no se hacen tortillas, sí y este otro también. Y también tenemos una maravilla que es el caviar.
We have one that is the caviar.
El caviar mexicano, ¿sí saben cuál es?
Which one do you think it's Mexican caviar? Frijoles?
No,
No.
hay otra cosa que es el
There's
caviar.
another one.
Resulta que el maíz se empezó a podrir,
We had,
se puso negro.
it turns out that one day corn started to rot.
Y los aztecas, en vez de pensar, ya se nos echó a perder la cosecha,
And the Mexica, instead of saying, "Oh my God, this harvest is spoiled,"
dijeron, no, esto es un maíz de los dioses.
they said,
Y-
"No, this is a corn from the gods.
Es el huitlacoche,
That is huitlacoche."
¿sí? No pude conseguir ahorita un maíz auténtico para enseñárselo, pero tenemos una foto, ¿no?
See?
Tenemos una foto.
I couldn't show you. I couldn't take or get corn that had huitlacoche on it, but we will show you a photo.
Se ve así, los maíces estos se hacen grandotes, son un hongo, un verdadero hongo, se hacen grandes y negros. Por eso se le llama el caviar, por eso se le llama que es un regalo de los dioses, porque apareció así. Entonces, los aztecas, en vez de decir que estaban descompuestos, no, al contrario, lo valoraron más, valoraron más.
Instead of when seeing that this had evolved or that there was this appearance of a fungi, instead of just tearing it down, the Mexica really saw this as a sign of the gods.
Y otra maravilla que tenemos también es el nopal.
Another thing that we have that is marvelous is the nopal.
Con se le dan de cachetadas a los hijos.
With this one you can punish your kids.
¿Cómo que no quieres comer? Toma,
What do you
toma.
mean you don't wanna eat that?
Si es que no me gustan los nopales. ¿Por qué? Porque son muy saludables.
They're very healthy,
De verdad, muy saludables.
super healthy.
Los nopales limpian a uno los triglicéridos,
They help to arrange or balance your triglycerides.
le ayudan a uno a la digestión
They help with digestion,
y por eso no le gustan a los niños.
and it's because that's the why children don't like them.
Y otra cosa que tampoco le gustan a los niños son las calabazas.
And also
Mire.
zucchinis are frowned upon by children.
Y vean la maravilla que hacen los mexicanos con las calabazas. Esto es una calabaza,
That is a pumpkin. This is a gourd.
¿sí? Esto es una calabaza.
That is a gourd.
Esto es una calabaza.
This is also a gourd.
En esto es lo que comíamos,
This is what we used
comían nuestros ancestros.
This is what many of our ancestors used to eat.
Y bebían. Aquí también se toma el agua, el atole. Es un vaso y es un plato. Esto, ¿sí? ¿De dónde viene? De aquí,
Glass, and it's a plate. And where does it come
De
from?
esto.
From here, from this.
¿sí? Y aquí viene. Bueno, a hoy yo espero que el profesor nos invite un buen mezcal, porque este es para los mezcales.
And I hope Jose treats us to a good mezcal because this is for mezcal.
Sí, no, ¿usted les gustaría probar un mezcal en algo ancestral?
Would you like to
Digan
taste
que sí.
mezcal in something ancestral? Please say yes.
Y vean, estos jarritos también son para el mezcal,
This is also for mezcal.
son para el tequila.
For tequila.
¿Cuál prefieren?
Which one is your favorite? Which one will you drink from?
El auténtico, ¿verdad? ¿O cuál prefieren? ¿Verdad? Es una experiencia esto. Y otra cosa que les quiero decir, esto también es una calabaza. ¿Y yo saben para qué lo ocupo? Como cuchara.
This is also a gourd. And you know
Yo
what I
con
use it
esto
for? As a
sirvo los
spoon.
nopales, sirvo las calabazas, sirvo el arroz, los frijoles.
I serve rice,
Es
beans,
una cuchara.
zucchinis, it's a spoon.
Ujú. Y bueno, también nosotros, y al menos yo, en lo personal, en México, cocino en puras ollas de barro.
In Mexico, I cook only in clay pots.
Es increíble el sabor que da el barro.
It is incredible the flavor that it imparts.
Increíble de verdad el sabor que tiene el barro. En México hay muchas provincias que todavía se usa mucho
There's a
y,
lot of provinces and places that it's used for,
y es muy, muy saludable.
and it is also very healthy.
Aquí están haciendo el barro
This is where they are doing it,
y acá lo están vendiendo.
and this is where they sell it.
Ahí lo están vendiendo, ¿sí? Estas son unas verdaderas joyas, aquí son carísimas.
This is really a jewel. Here, they are super expensive in the US.
Es un verdadero problema traerlas de México. Yo cuando voy no puedo traerlas porque mucho requisito en la aduana. Entonces, ¿qué hago? Comprarlas aquí.
So I cannot bring them from Mexico. It's a pain because when you go, especially through customs, they ask you for a lot of different things.
Bueno, y ahora vamos a lo mejor de lo mejor.
And now we're gonna go to the best of the best.
El alimento del futuro.
The food of the future.
¿Sí saben qué son?
What do you think they are? Any crickets, chapulines,
Crickets. ¿En inglés así se dice?
crickets, sí. Sí.
No, no son grillos.
No son grillos.
Ah, sí son grillos, ¿verdad?
Sí, pues,
Son, pues, sí.
cousins, primos.
Bueno, pues este es el alimento del futuro. Los
This
grillos.
is the food of the future. For
Es-
kids especially.
Tiene mucha proteína. Ya no necesitan comer carne.
It has a ton of protein. You don't need to eat. You don't need to eat meat.
Con los chapulines, los nopales y el huitlacoche
Chapulines,
suficiente.
huitlacoche, nopales, a full diet.
y una buena tortilla.
And of course, a good tortilla.
Y en los días especiales, el pozole.
And in very good days, the pozole. Or pozole.
Les voy a decir que, por ejemplo, el mole es una gran elaboración.
For mole, for example, we're talking about a very lengthy period of elaboration.
Se lleva uno un día entero
It's a one day long
en hacerlo,
process.
porque hay que tener mucha paciencia con cada chile. Son 5 tipos de chiles que se les pone.
Specifically, you have to have a lot of patience with the 5 different types of chilies.
Y la variedad de semillas, que son las almendras, las nueces, las pasitas, las
And
pepitas,
other variety of dry fruits, specifically nuts.
todas las condimentos. En total son como 40 ingredientes que lleva.
So normally a mole is composed of 40 different ingredients.
Son 40, o sea, lleva tortilla, plátano, pan, galletas, chocolate.
You also have, you sometimes can put tortillas, you can also put bread, you can put chocolate, you can put, what else? ¿Qué otra cosa llevaba? Galletas, you can put cookies or biscuits.
Sí, lleva muchas cosas. Es el mole moderno, el de hoy.
This is the modern mole.
Yo les traje hoy un mole, pero el pasado, el ancestral,
So it's not the one that we're going to taste today.
que no contiene nada de eso más que 5 ingredientes, que es el cacao y un cacao muy original que ahorita el profesor me trajo, y ese cacao es el que trae aquí este mole.
So for my mole, I only made 5 ingredients because it's the ancestral way to make the mole. One is a cacao that was brought by José.
Antes no teníamos azúcar,
We didn't have sugar. There
se
was
usaba
no
pura miel.
sugar. It was the only honey.
Y este mole trae miel de agave,
And this one has agave honey.
¿sí? Y trae un auténtico cacao y los chiles. Entonces, muy ancestral. Espero que su paladar lo acepte, lo diguste. De veras, ahorita que lo prueben, degústenlo, saborenlo, sientan el chile más que nada. Y les traigo otro que también tenemos, pues, a veces me pongo a pensar que México, si fuera una mina, tiene mucho oro.
So I'm also bringing something else, but I think about this one. If Mexico was a mine, it would certainly have a lot of gold in its food.
El otro tesoro, el otro oro que tenemos es la pepita.
And the other one that we have is the sunflower seed.
Esta calabaza tiene 3 usos.
This pumpkin or this gourd has 3 uses.
Nos comemos lo de adentro,
We eat what it's inside,
nos comemos la pepita
we eat the seed,
y hacemos nuestros
and we
recipientes,
eat in the gourd.
¿sí? Y les traje calabaza también para que la prueben,
And I also brought a type of squash so you can taste it.
con una miel de piloncillo. Esto es nuestro azúcar.
With raw cane sugar of piloncillo or panela that you can see there in front.
Ya cuando llegaron los españoles, pues se empezó a sembrar la caña y se empezó a hacer el azúcar, pero siempre optamos más por el azúcar no refinada.
So
No
with the
refinada.
introduction of cane sugar in the Americas, we always opted that while there was being refined sugar production, the local taste was more for unrefined sugar.
O sea, tratamos de comer pues lo más natural, lo más cercano a lo saludable.
We try to eat the most natural, the most healthy.
Y bueno, ahorita ustedes van a probar un nopal crudo, totalmente crudo,
We're gonna taste raw nopales,
y van a ver que no es desagradable,
and it's not necessarily disgusting.
porque ustedes se pueden hacer licuado para que puedan descongestionar su organismo. Es excelente.
You can make a smoothie so you can cleanse your organism, your body.
Y para que no les sepa mal, pues pueden combinarlo, le ponen piña, jugo de naranja,
And if you don't want it to taste that bad, you can use orange juice, you can use pineapple,
pepino, apio, o sea, todo lo que quieran ponerle.
pear, celery.
Pero poquito, le ponen más nopal, ¿eh?
But just
Porque
a
si
little
no,
bit.
ya
Make
saben.
sure that it is nopal. If not,
Cachetadas.
you're gonna get a slap with the nopal.
Entonces te lo van a probar crudo y lo van a probar asado. Para nosotros estos son nuestros bisteces.
And you're gonna also taste it grilled. For this one is the replacement of what we will say a steak.
Y bueno, pues vamos a lo más antiguo de nosotros, los mexicanos, a lo cual le tenemos mucho respeto y
And now we're gonna transfer over to what it is the most antique for us Mexicans, and we have a lot of respect for it.
el vivir de nosotros, ahorita todavía se vive así en las provincias.
And we continue to cook or to live like this still in the provinces.
Cuando uno se va a casar,
When someone's gonna get married,
el esposo, el futuro esposo,
the husband, the lucky one,
tiene que comprar el petate.
has to buy the petate.
El petate es tejido de palma.
The petate is weaved with palm leaves.
Es una palma muy especial, es un gran arte hacer un petate. Se tienen que meter debajo de una cueva donde esté fresco para que la palma se pueda manejar, porque si no se hace dura y no se puede.
So the production process of the petate is to get the leaves of said palm and to go under a cake that has to be cooled enough that you can dry but also weave the petate in it. If otherwise, it would be impossible to do this.
Y de ahí nace la palabra, yo no sé, bueno, de ahí nace cuando nosotros morimos. Bueno, porque cuando nos casamos, esto es lo que nos compran. ¿Sí? Esta es la cama. Esta es nuestra cama, el petate.
So when we get married, this is our bed. This is where we're going to sleep. This is our mattress.
Cuando nace un bebé, en un petate nace.
When you give birth in a petate.
En el petate nace ahí, nace el bebé.
That's where you give birth.
Y cuando morimos, nos envuelven en el petate y nos entierran.
And when you die, you do so in a petate and you get rolled up in one and you are buried in it.
Por eso de ahí nace la palabra, ya se petateó.
So that's why in Mexico, when we want to refer to someone dying, we say ya se petateó.
¿Sí? El petate es algo muy ancestral, muy respetado, porque también aquí es donde uno se hinca para cocinar, para hacer los alimentos de toda la familia.
So it's always very sacred, specifically in the kitchen context, because it's where one is going to lay down to cook for the entire family.
Para nosotros las mamás es algo muy sagrado cocinar.
In motherhood, it's considered sacred, the labor of cooking.
Y el petate es porque cuando el maíz, me permite una cazuelita de maíz, cuando uno va a moler el maíz, muchas de las veces, a la hora de ponerlo aquí, vean, se cae.
And what I'm doing right now is I'm putting corn on top of this stone grinder, and we consider petate very sacred because, as you saw, when I poured the corn into it, some of the corn kernels fell off.
Y las personas de antes no podían permitir que un maíz tocara la tierra.
And beforehand, we could not allow that a corn kernel will touch earth directly.
Era una falta de respeto que un maíz nada más se cayera a la
It
tierra.
was a complete lack of respect that even one,
Tenían que pedir perdón.
they will have to ask for forgiveness.
Entonces, por eso el petate era importante ponerlo, porque si se caía aquí, uno lo levantaba
Because if it falls in the petate, no issue.
y podía uno seguir el trabajo. Aquí en este metate, esta es la piedra ancestral, la piedra más antigua que tenemos, y es donde molemos el maíz, el chile, el jitomate.
And here, what I'm showing you now is the metate, like the one there in the exhibition, where we will have, and we will use it as a grinder to grind corn, tomato,
Todos los alimentos aquí se muelen.
anything basically that has to be processed, we will use this stone grinder.
Y a un lado se tiene el anafre o la estufa, que es de piedra.
And right next to it, we have the anafre, which is basically the stove that can be made of tin or rock.
Esto le llamamos anafre. Vean, está hecho de un metal.
This one is what we call an anafre. This one's made of tin.
Adentro, en el hueco, se le mete la leña
We will put either wood directly
o
or
arriba
carbon or coal,
carbón.
or on top coal.
O sea, son las dos maneras. Se pone abajo leña o arriba carbón.
Wood, coal. Do not put the coal in here. Put it.
Y es donde ponemos las cazuelas.
And that's where we will put.
De lo que estamos moliendo, estamos cocinando. O sea, tenemos las dos cosas cerquitas aquí. El metal.
El metate para que lo veas si quiere la gente.
Ahorita lo ponemos arriba. Sí, porque ahorita les voy a decir. Y tenemos los comales que son. Esta es una miniatura.
And this one's very small. This one's just for show.
Y los comales, vean, son de barro también.
And we have basically this is our sauce pots or this is our pans.
Entonces estamos aquí moliendo el maíz. Ya que está hecho masa, estamos haciendo las tortillas aquí mismo hincadas.
So we are basically grinding the corn, kneeling down next to the anafre or the source of heat. So we're immediately after ground making the tortillas.
Se están haciendo las tortillas, se está poniendo la olla, cocinando, y todo aquí lo estamos haciendo, tortillas y guisando.
So we're making everything.
Y los hijos, pues ya, esperando la comida.
And always the kids are around us waiting for the food.
Y entonces esto es algo muy, muy antiguo, es lo primero que fabricaron. Esta es la piedra más original. Hoy ya hay otros metates con patitas.
So now you can see that this metate in particular does not have any kind of legs. So it is a very traditional metate, probably one of the closest we have to what we will have originally looked at.
Esto es lo que se tenía que tener cuando uno se casaba.
This is your wedding gear, basically.
Ahí tenemos, vean. Ahí no pude encontrar una foto donde esté una jovencita, pero creo que sí hay una, donde hay una jovencita. Sí. Pero es que eso lo hace uno desde jovencito, uno se casa ya a los 15 años.
This is something you do from a very young age, especially because most marriages will occur when you are 15 years old.
Entonces, toda la vida es esto. Toda la vida es estar hincado, moliendo.
All your life becomes kneeling and grinding.
Y cocinando.
And cooking.
Por eso es que para nosotros el cocinar es entregar la vida, entregar el amor, no es cocinar por cocinar.
That is why cooking is to deliver love. It's not cooking for cooking.
Para nosotros es algo muy sagrado el poder cocinar para nuestra familia.
It is very sacred to be able to cook for one's family.
Ahora sí, si quiere. Ahorita en la actualidad ya no bueno, muchas personas sí tienen el petate, pero ahora ya se construye como una base de tabique y eso, y ahora en la actualidad ya se tiene más abajito.
Almost.
Más.
So now, currently, you will have the metate not directly on the petate, but you might have it a little bit rise up, mostly sometimes directly into the surface of a cooking.
O sea, des en cuenta, no puede ser de esta altura porque no se puede moler. Entonces ahora ya se construyen como unas mesas más cortitas.
So it's important to know that it's not fully raised. It has to still be so you can bend down, so you have the strength to grind.
Y ahí está uno moliendo, ahí a un lado tiene también el fogón.
It's still the same process in which you're cooking by the fire.
Tiene uno las ollas, tiene uno el comal, todo esto uno cocinando, ¿sí?
Or it continues to be the same configuration. O una licuadora. Or a Vitamix.
A hoy ya, pues estamos bien modernizados, ¿verdad? Y qué bueno y qué malo.
We have become very modern for good and for not so good.
Y bueno, esta es la licuadora.
This one's the blender, speaking of it.
Esta es la licuadora del pasado. Aquí igual, haciendo la salsa, moliendo cualquier especie, todo lo que se necesitaba era en el molcajete. Vean también cómo eran antes, en la era prehistórica, en la era de los aztecas, de lo más antiguo. Y vean ahora, ya le ponen patitas, y hoy están hasta más modernos, ya le ponen una carita de puerquito por aquí, todo ya.
So you can see that the molcajete, as our blender, it started very rough looking.
Era una piedra que simplemente le hacían un hoyo.
It was just a stone where you will carve directly a hole, and then you have a more estilized version where you have the legs and you have the pestle, the one that we have here. You can now find the Estela says even with a little piece of a pork or something like that.
Y bueno, en este molcajete se muelen los chapulines para poderlos poner alrededor de una cerveza.
So in this molcajete you will
No, del mezcal.
find chapulines, so you can put them in the rim of a beer or mezcal.
Todo esto es lo más vegano que ustedes pueden encontrar.
This is so vegan.
Nosotros no teníamos carne,
We didn't have meat.
no había puercos,
No porks,
no había vacas,
no cows,
no había caballos,
no horses,
no había gallinas.
no some styles of chicken.
Entonces, por lo tanto, pues no había huevos.
And so we didn't have eggs.
Y pues no éramos ni siquiera vegetarianos, sino.
We didn't have cheese, so maybe vegetarian was out of the question as well.
¿Por qué? Porque no había leche,
There was no milk
ni sus derivados de la leche.
or dairy.
No había harina.
There wasn't flour.
Por eso cuando llegaron los españoles se sorprendieron de ver esa gente tan saludable, tan saludable.
In the Spanish conquistadors or explorers, they were impressed about the health status of a lot of indigenous people.
Con esa, pues, ¿qué les diré? Ese cuerpo, tanto de hombres como mujeres, robustos, altos, delgados, fornidos, no gordos, y los niños igual, muy, muy saludables.
So So if you see some of the contemporary historical depictions of indigenous people, you will see that they were represented tall, muscular, healthy, young looking.
Nosotros tenemos un
No,
momentito
no fat. Sí, yes.
para recibir.
Oh, adelante, por favor. So we're going to make a start.
Pásenle.
So we can welcome the Mexican consul. The Mexican
Nuestro
consul.
cónsul mexicano, gracias por venir, cónsul. Gracias, Bárbara, por venir.
Gracias, Alberto.
Qué gusto verlos, gracias. Entonces, bueno, pues yo a hoy les traigo también ya algo que después de que nos trajeron todos estos nuevos alimentos, a hoy, pues ustedes saben toda la alimentación que hay en México, les traje un pastel de nopal.
I have now configured for today a nopal cake
Y unos tamales de chocolate
and chocolate tamales
y una calabaza.
and squash or pumpkin, candied pumpkin.
Candy pumpkin,
Yes.
sí, sí. Sí, nosotros no ponemos en la casa calabazas con los hoyitos como le hacen aquí y no la tiramos tampoco. Sino la cocinamos, comemos la calabaza. Entonces esas 3 muestras les traje ahora, pero ya pues con los ingredientes que tenemos.
We will now taste some of these different things.
Y bueno, no sé cuánto tiempo nos quede.
Sí, no,
Yo puedo seguir platicando.
A comer,
O ya comemos.
ya comemos.
¿Tienen hambre? No
Are
creo.
you
¿ver?
hungry?
Oigan, pero es que el pan estaba muy llenador con el chocolate.
I was like, I was making time because you already said that you were full with bread, with Dia de Muertos bread.
Bueno, pues espero que les haya gustado la explicación de nuestros instrumentos, nuestros trastes, nuestros recipientes que utilizamos. Y pues ahora van a degustar la comida. Yo les traje un tasting, una prueba.
So I'm very appreciative of your attention and time, and I hope you had enjoyed my talk and demonstration here. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about what I have brought for a tasting.
En unas tortillas azules.
In blue corn tortillas.
En unas tortillas azules, que es el maíz
So we have blue corn tortillas
más exclusivo que tenemos.
that are very exclusive.
Y van a probar el moji, así se llama.
We're going to try moyu, which is the ancestral version of mole.
A hoy se llama mole porque tiene más ingredientes.
Today we call it mole because it has a little bit more ingredients.
El pipián
We're going to try pipián.
se llama pipián porque tiene pura pepita.
Because it is based out of pepitas, which is sunflower seeds. No, I'm sorry, squash seeds, sunflower seeds.
Y no lleva tampoco nada de, por ejemplo, también se hace un mole verde
And we also have a green mole that could be based on this,
con la misma pepita,
with the same pepita.
pero entonces ya se llama mole verde,
But then
¿sí? Ya cambia de nombre.
¿Qué cambia? ¿De qué ingredientes cambia?
Esto se prendió.
No se apure. Ya está. What
Ve.
ingredients? ¿Qué ingredientes cambian en el pepián?
En el pipián tienen, fíjense, es de veras fascinante y muy saludable el pipián, porque tiene las hojas de los rábanos, no sé si los conozcan los rábanos,
So what pipián has is radish leaves,
las hojas, tiene hojas de lechuga,
lettuce,
tiene cilantro,
cilantro,
tiene los cebollines, esas cebollitas chiquitas,
yes,
el rabo, el cebollín, eso es lo que contiene,
scallions,
y pues pura pepita.
and just pumpkin seeds. That's all.
¿Saben que nosotros no teníamos cebollas ni ajos?
We didn't have garlic or onion before.
Por eso mucha gente es alérgica al ajo.
That's why there's a lot of allium allergies.
Entonces, es lo que les digo, nosotros tenemos una comida tan vegana, tan saludable,
We have a very healthy, almost vegan food.
y bueno, les traje eso, el pipián y el huitlacoche, que también van a probar.
La coche,
El huitlacoche pues contiene champiñones, elote, y que es la combinación del huitlacoche. Y les traje, bueno, el nopal en crudo para que lo prueben ustedes y vean que no es tan desagradable, es un poco ligoso, hay muchos paladares que no lo aceptan, pero por salud creo que debemos de aceptarlo, ¿no?
And then I brought you nopales. We're gonna taste two versions. One that is raw, and as I said, it's not that bad, but you might want to accept it because of your health.
Y los invito a que ahora en sus carnes asadas se hagan nopales.
And I invite you that when you're grilling from now on, you also include nopales.
Lo ponen en un comal.
You can put it in a grill or in a plancha.
Sí, así crudo, le ponen un poquito de sal y lo ponen ahí.
And then you can just throw it in there.
Y se cose y listo, ¿sí?
And then it's done.
Y pues también los invito a que empiecen a probar el futuro.
And then I invite you into the future.
En una próxima clase espero traerles gusanos.
And in the next class, maybe we can try worms.
Hay hay otros animalitos redonditos que se llaman escamoles.
Then ant eggs, escamoles.
Y pues hay mucha más comida, ¿sí? Que podemos degustar, apreciar y valorar y obtener. No la tenemos toda aquí. Por ejemplo, a mí me cuesta mucho trabajo a veces conseguir los nopales, simplemente.
Sometimes it's very difficult to get some of these ingredients, so I invite you to taste them.
Y bueno, para que se pasen toda esta comida, pues creo que necesitamos algo líquido, ¿verdad?
And for us to really be able to get all this food down, we need something liquid.
Y les traje algo también muy ancestral, muy saludable, es la chía.
And I also brought you a surprise, which is a chia water.
En una próxima clase les voy a mostrar también cómo se puede integrar en diferentes alimentos. Ahorita viene en agua.
We should do a chia class.
Muy bien, pues vamos a comenzar a montar.
So we're going to start getting all these ingredients done in the meantime.
Can you tell me what's your name?
My name is Lisa Gentili.
Where are you from?
I'm from Melrose, north of Boston.
Oh, good. And is this your first time knowing something about Mexican food, or you?
I'm of
tasted
Mexican
before?
descent, but
Oh,
was really kind of pulled from my family when I was little. So we kind of moved away from our heritage. My mom remarried, so. But my grandfather is from Leon,
Oh,
Mexico. So I have the heritage in my blood,
Yeah.
but and I do cook some Mexican food, but more traditional American. This is very interesting to me.
yeah. So you would like to learn more on how to prepare Mexican dishes in the traditional way?
Yeah, more the traditional way. I'm just learning of some of my background heritage through 23andMe. So I'm really kind of going through the steps of understanding my heritage and my background so that I can cook more. I'm with the gastronomy program here at BU.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you've been in Mexico and anything?
I've never been, but Professor Perez is going to go in the spring, so I think I might take it. Well, New Mexico, not really the Mexico, but New Mexico. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, and I hope that you.
My name is Keelan Daw.
I'm Enna Grazier,
Where are you from?
Exeter, New Hampshire.
I'm from Danvers, Mass, but I work with Enna, and we are at Enna Chocolate up in Exeter, New Hampshire.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
How did you find out about the class here?
Through Carla and Jose and FCCI newsletter. I've subscribed to the newsletter.
And what did you know before coming to this class? And now you're gonna learn more. But you ever hear about Mexican food or something, or is your first time?
We have both enjoyed a lot of Mexican food in New Mexico, but I have not eaten it in different regions of Mexico.
And did you like? Do you feel like attracted to the culture for some reason, or?
Definitely, yeah.
And why? Why is it like the most attractive thing for you, for the Mexican thing, like the food, the culture, the traditions, or?
I love learning all about different traditions and the way people connect with each other. I love the colorful, like the embroidery that you're wearing, and it often feels very celebratory and authentic. Yeah.
And you know any, or you have any friends or any relatives, anything that is Mexican, or?
I actually have some very good friends. One of my dearest friends married a Mexican and got married in Mexico City, and we were able to tour Teotihuacan and Tasco and went all over. And it was fascinating learning and seeing the pyramids and certainly eating authentic Mexican cuisine and everything there with the mole and certainly the churros y chocolate and all that kind of stuff down there. But we actually had our aunt lived in New Mexico for a number of years, and we were able to visit Chaco Canyon, where some of the relics are from this exhibit, and dine on delicious, festive, authentic New Mexican food as well, which is really just a divine cuisine as well. One of my dear friends is a chef, Dave Vargas, up in New Hampshire, who I think he's from Oaxaca, but I'm not sure. But he's a really fabulous chef, and he's Mexican.
And you never been in Mexico?
I haven't.
Yeah?
I
you
need to.
go.
I know, it's so
What's
close.
the most thing that you like it in Mexico? The places?
Oh, it was just fascinating. The history, the culture, being able to use my very limited Spanish and being able to understand that. And we've been to like Cozumel and the Yucatan and stuff like that, but seeing the pyramids multiple times, it's fascinating to learn about it and just experience another culture.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
hope that you enjoyed the class. And the
Thank you. I'm
programs.
looking forward to it.
Hattie, where are you from?
I live in Natick, west of Boston.
Western Boston? Okay, and how did you find out about this class? And
I'm a BU alum,
Yeah.
and I think I saw it on a mailing list. I don't remember. I get some mailings from Boston University because I graduated a long time ago. My daughter just graduated in May.
good.
So,
And do you know anything before come here about Mexican food or anything, or is your
not
first
much.
time?
I don't know very much.
And did you try this chocolate?
I just did. It's delicious.
And
It's
what do you
delicious.
think? Is it the first time that you?
Yeah, well, this type of chocolate.
Yeah, this type of
yeah.
chocolate.
Thank you.
And did you know before about this pan de muerto, bread of the
no,
dead?
didn't know. This is bread of the dead.
Yeah, this is bread
Mexico,
of the dead.
from
It's a
Mexico.
Mexican bread, like a sweet bread.
I had a
Yeah.
bite. It's delicious. Thank you.
Okay, and what? And you have like any expectations about the class, or what do you?
No, I was just curious.
Just curious.
I've never been to any presentation here, so I just wanted to see what it was about. Learn something. I like to learn.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.